Joining us now, House Foreign Affairs Committee member, Florida Congresswoman Paulina Luna. Congresswoman, great to see you tonight. Let's start with this one. We don't have a text yet. It's driving Democrats crazy. Frankly, I've seen some on the right who are getting a little worked up about it as well. Is that a big deal to you?
Look, I've been in constant communication with the White House since this started, and what I will say is the reason why they haven't fully released the text yet is because they have an agreement in which they will be putting that out publicly after it is signed. Not to mention, it will then be codified by the United Nations in a binding resolution. And look, I'm not even a huge fan of the UN, but it is a big difference between what has happened now under President Trump and what was formerly brokered, which is basically mothballing the Iranian nuclear plan under Barack Obama. And so I do have faith in what President Trump is doing. I know that J.D. Vance, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, everyone involved is not wanting to continue business as usual in Washington, and they are actively looking for peace, not just here, but also with Russia and Ukraine.
Congresswoman, and even the Wall Street Journal in a critical editorial saying Trump stages an Iran retreat says the result is not Obama deal 2.0, as so many on the left in Democrats in Congress are trying to portray it, that it's worse than the JCPOA, which is just unfathomable because the nuclear program is in rubble, to use the Wall Street Journal's word, and its enrichment of uranium has been halted for the first time in 20 years. And that, as J.D. Vance, the vice president, pointed out over on the news channel earlier, just about an hour ago, that you will be rewarded, Iran, if you transform yourself fundamentally as a nation. I think that's pretty clear even without seeing the memorandum of understanding.
Look, there are many people. This is largely also, too, I want to remind the American people, being driven on social media by foreign adversaries that are trying to prevent the peace deal from actually taking place, and then also trying to fracture us as a country to pit us against one another. So what I will say is that everyone needs to take a step back, because a lot of people are speculating without actually knowing the full terms and details of what the deal is. And it is not my place to get ahead of the president or the White House or the vice president on this. But what I will say is that the deal on the table will be beneficial for everyone involved. And I would encourage the government of Israel to take President Trump's advice and ensure that they are also adhering to what the peace deal is, because we want to make sure that A, no one else is getting hurt, and then also two, that we can ensure that Iran will never have access to a nuclear weapon, in which if they go along and agree with what they said they are going to do, and I'd like to remind the American people that they have gone on to their Iranian state media and have also announced that there is a deal and an agreement that has been met with the U.S. government and President Trump. They will then be able to begin this phase where they will unlock their seized assets. And so, again, the U.S. government is not using taxpayer dollars in order to bribe or buy the Iranian regime their efforts to denuclearize. But what we are doing is exercising our authority in protecting the American people and ensuring that this peace deal is protected and completed as soon as possible.
Based on performance.
Yes.
Performance-based. Okay,
Correct.
great. I want to move on to another war. President Trump turning his attention to Ukraine and Russia, meeting with President Zelensky at the G7 summit this morning as he continues to push for a peace deal. Listen.
We had a very good meeting. Look, Russia should make a deal. Russia's lost tremendous amounts of people, and so has Ukraine.
Congresswoman, I'm reading that the Europeans are getting uptight, that President Trump might be back in the Ukraine-Russia conversation. What do you think is going to happen? What ought to happen?
I think that we are going to be able to broker a peace deal between both Russia and Ukraine. Look, Ukraine needs weapons being sold to NATO in order to sustain their war efforts, and those weapons come from the U.S. government. There is a deal. It is the Trump initiative that both Mr. Kushner and Witkoff have been working very hard to accomplish and get both Russia and Ukraine to the table on. The Russian government has publicly admitted that they have accepted those terms, and it is now Zelensky who needs to also accept those terms. I want to remind the American people there is massive security guarantees for the Ukrainian government, but we cannot lead with tomahawks instead of peace talks. We have to ensure that there's an end to this war. And also, I want to remind the American people, war is expensive. Okay, so if we have the ability to broker that, why wouldn't we?
And Ukraine's done a doggone good job of putting the hammer down on Russia's oil infrastructure. Russia's struggling mightily, and it's easier to get behind somebody who's winning, I would think. Congresswoman Paulina Luna, good to see you.
Thank you.